Welcome to the Travel Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Vandenberg. On our show, I interview and connect with leaders across travel, hospitality, and tourism. We talk leadership in our industry, what has shaped them, the successes, failures, and everything in between. Today, I'm speaking with Karen Kühl, Executive Director of the Cayuga County Convention and Visitors Bureau. The Travel Leader is brought to you by the Travel Leader Coach, a leadership coaching and content company. We help established high-performing travel leaders and teams improve leadership competencies. Learn more at www.travelleadercoach.com. Karen, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Rachel. I'm so excited to get this conversation.
Yeah, so we actually met, it's been, I want to say December 2022 when you hosted in Cayuga County the Travel Unity Conference.
That's right. That's when we had the first opportunity to meet each other, under the same conversations that we're both so passionate about.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we had a great experience then at that conference, and your team and everyone there were such wonderful hosts for that opportunity to be together. So thank you.
Thanks for coming. It's always fun when you get to host good people around.
Yeah. So to get us started, I'd love to know what the red thread has been throughout your travel and hospitality career.
I had to do some soul searching when you asked that question. It's like, all right, what is the red thread? So I got into this whole rabbit hole. It's like, so what does the red thread represent? And so bottom line, what I came up with is sustainability, but at its full concept. Sustainability, a lot of people associate it with just the environment and the green movement and stuff. But sustainability really encompasses people, planet, prosperity, and purpose. And for me, that purpose part is very important because regardless of which pillar of sustainability I am focusing on, the why behind it, the purpose for that initiative, that person, that highlighting project is always important. So I found the red thread to be sustainability.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing. I actually share that because I had irrespective of hospitality and travel before I was in this industry, I had a career in corporate social responsibility and sustainability. So I love that you've pointed that out as an important part of your pathway. So how did you end up connecting that with travel and hospitality?
I think it is, or certainly should be, core of what every travel and hospitality organization does. Tourism has a huge environmental impact for this very basic reason that people travel. A movement from one location to another has a big environmental impact and social impact because you're putting people from two different social backgrounds to different cultures together, and how they interact is also very impactful. So whether or not we know it, I think every business that's in the tourism industry is involved in sustainability, and them that being acknowledged and verbalized, I think has a big impact on how we run our businesses.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it is, you're absolutely right. It's something that, we unfortunately, I don't think talk enough about in the industry when it is so incredibly obvious. Also, in terms of what is the impact of sustainability issues on destinations, for example, like climate change, or, the people aspect when it comes to over tourism and how that also impacts the environment. So yeah, it is something we should definitely be talking about more.
Absolutely. I'm all for it.
Yeah. How would someone you work closely with describe you as a leader?
I'll start with, I definitely have my strengths, and we all have opportunity for improvement and growth. I'm a very compassionate leader in the fact that I try to let everybody that I work with be their own leader and find their own path. And it is my role as the leader to support that direction, right? But I'm also very passionate in everything I do. And I think with passion comes a little scatterbrain, because there's so many things that I find so incredibly great and we want to pursue. And I find the more empowered people that I have worked with have often said, yo, Karen, take a breath. Let's refocus on
All
this.
right. Take a step
So,
back.
exactly. But I always find that I do empower those I work with for them to feel they can do that. And they're always in a
Mm,
position of saying, wait, hold on, let's have a conversation about this and let's refocus what we said we were going to do, and, and provide more direction in that. So I would say both. I'm very supportive, but at the same time, I'm a little scatterbrained because of my passion and all the different things that I want to do. But
right.
I think most of the people that I've worked with have seen that ultimately as a positive direction for the things we do together.
Yeah. That passion element is so critical in leadership because I think one of the things, I mean, you described it, a little bit as maybe being a weakness in some point, in some circumstances because you're scatterbrained. But I think I see it also as a tremendous strength because we need passion as leaders to inspire people, right? Like that's part of our role. How do you think you have done that? You've channeled that passion into inspiration?
By allowing the natural paths to happen, I guess. I mean, I am passionate, but I am an avid listener. Ultimately, you will find me in most groups as the quiet person in the background, because I find it so very important to let people find who they are and find that direction. So in the various projects that I have become passionate about, they all started as a passive listener in the process.
Mm,
And I had fun going down this red thread, as you call it, and trying to identify the various projects in my professional and personal path that have been that have come to fruition because of that passion, because of that, getting so involved with the individuals and the stories and the locations that I've worked with. I don't know if I answered your question directly, but you know,
No, but I think what I'm hearing is that at the core of that passion is things that are meaningful. And you've kind of been driven to do certain projects by listening and kind of taking away, okay, this is really meaningful. I need to get involved in this. And I think just show role modeling those kinds of behaviors is an inspiration to those around you. So I get where you're coming from
yeah.
100%. Who are you at your core beyond titles and the roles you play?
I am a team player in most of the roles that I have played and most of the projects that I have led or co-led, for the same reason that I mentioned and you kind of put together. I uh, I try to be in a position to understand the individuals that I'm working with, working for, and by for, I don't mean my superiors that I report to, but the communities whose story I am telling. I feel like I work for them, and the I try to always be the leader who listens and tries to get each individual to
Hmm.
shine and go forward and do the project. I'll use a couple more as examples. While living and working in Nicaragua, I had a team member who, not with our current employment at all, though we both work for the same company, she was empowered by the communities where we were working, and the fact that the farming community was disappearing because the younger generation was just looking for jobs in the big cities and they were looking to go away. And she kind of caught on to this movement, and she said, there's something that we as tourism professionals can do to help this. So we started
Hmm.
gathering the stories of these tropical products that as foreigners we're so passionate about, papaya, pineapple, plantains, cacao, coffee, and identified small farmers whose farmlands and cooperatives were disappearing because they were selling them out of family hands, and created a
Right.
tourism product out of this. This would not have happened. It was not my idea. It was not initiated by me. It was initiated by a team player. But I had certain assets that I could help to put this together. So together we put together a tour operator that we managed on the side to try to elevate the story of the farming and the agricultural industry that was disappearing. And it was such a big cultural aspect of the country that we wanted to do something about that. So I've found myself in many situations like this one in my professional career that might not be the project that I have at hand at the moment, but because of listening and being a bystander in the things that are going on, we, identified passion projects that really needed to be elevated and whose story needed to be told.
Yeah. What's starting to emerge here for me is also that connection back to support, and through this skill of listening and finding meaning, you're also able, and teamwork, like you said, you're able to identify when, okay, someone has a good idea or they have a story that needs to be told. How can I help channel that as a leader and a connector and bring that out through the support that you can give? And it's funny because that was something I really felt when I was at the Travel Unity conference, about Cayuga's story in terms of the history of Cayuga County. That it was not created in terms of the diversity that was there. It was clearly something that was brought out, and the story was told. It wasn't fabricated.
Mm-hmm.
um you really looked for, okay, what's the deep African American history that's here, and who are the players? And correct me if I'm telling this incorrectly, but that seems like another really good example of what you're talking about in terms of your leadership skills.
Absolutely. And I find myself very fortunate that I ended up in Cayuga County when I came to work in the United States, because that's just such a deeply passionate story that I was fortunate to be able to put together under the same vein, not only elevating the story of Harriet Tubman's chosen hometown, where she lived the last 50 years of her life, but who is walking Harriet Tubman's legacy today, and
Mm-hmm.
identifying find those stories and those community leaders who exemplify those traits and bringing those stories to the forefront. So by elevating this, internationally renowned individual and freedom fighter, finding a way to elevate the communities of today and all the
Mm-hmm.
players. And we strive at Cayuga County to ensure, once again, that that story is told from the authentic person, from the
Mm-hmm.
authentic voice, from the community, not only as community leaders, but organizations whose mission is to preserve Harriet Tubman's legacy and communicate with the regional uh, players how to keep moving forward, whose voices need to be elevated, and who would Harriet Tubman be supporting today? Whose story would she want to be? So,
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. No. No, that's yeah, now I'm getting a better feel for, where that support and meaning and contribution and teamwork all come together. So we've already been talking about it a little bit, but are there any other unique strengths or qualities that you would like to tell about yourself?
Patience, grace, to be that quiet voice in the background who tries to, all of us, when we first start talking to ourselves, and I hear myself doing it in just this interview, there are certain parts of ourselves and certain stories that we tell. But if you wait long enough, people start peeling those layers and you start kind of getting to the core of the individual. And that's one of the strengths about myself, both personally and professionally, who have gotten to be where I am, is that I've had the patience to wait those stories out.
Mm.
Let's get past the not the facade, but the story we tell of ourselves and who we have identified ourselves to be, and wait a moment to see the reality that comes out behind that. And that's the core of who not only individuals are, but communities and
Yeah.
landmarks, the character of a destination. Even that you have to give it a little time. Goes back to how we started with sustainability. If you are a proponent of slow travel, you are more likely to really get to the character destination you're going to, instead of just
Mm.
bypassing seeing the Louvre and the Eiffel Tower and
Yep.
then moving on to the next big city in Europe. But if you really allow yourself to become part of the community and stay in the less traveled areas and go to the diners that are not listed as the top 10 places to visit in a destination. But it's the same part as a professional. And that's something that I've been very blessed with, is that patience to just like, oh, very interesting. Congratulations for
Yeah.
those 5 awards you got. Tell me a little bit more about yourself, right? To get a
Yeah.
little bit deeper.
Yeah. So what it sounds like, I mean, where, what patience means based on that example that you gave and why it's so important is that if you're too fast and you're just trying to hit check off the list, that you miss the best parts
Yeah.
and you miss the deeper story and the deeper meaning of whatever you're doing, whether it's a conversation with someone or a trip or a project. Um, so yeah, I could see how that, I think we often as leaders, we are in a rush too much because of that constant state of urgency. And there's a really important lesson there about the power of patience. And what someone once actually, I think in a podcast episode, talked about the power of pause, right? Kind of a
Hmm.
similar idea of just like, wait, let's take a moment here. Let's step back and see what's at the root of this.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's great. Power stuff there. So, what are some stories or experiences that have shaped who you are today?
There are many stories. I have some friends who I've known for like 10 years, and then I start saying something like, wait, I didn't know that about you. When did that happen? Right.
Right.
But, but if there's one experience that has shaped me who I have become, is my immigration story. I'm a first generation immigrant from Nicaragua to the United States. And it's something that I intentionally erased from my cognizant reality for many years, because not something I wanted to acknowledge, not something I wanted to put out there about myself. But I did go from being a private school kid with the Barbie hotel and the Barbie airplane, and our house had a gardener and we had a housekeeper, and I grew up with a
Wow.
nanny slash nurse. And then we immigrated, and I felt like I lived from the grace and welcoming of friends and relatives for many years. We kind of
Mhm.
migrated from place to place until we finally found our new roots in the United States. And we lived essentially in the projects for a couple of years, and I was the outed. And so, and I was very young. I mean, these were very formative years in my life. We moved to the United States when I was 8, but those roots kind of stay with you. And
Yeah.
I, faced lots of discrimination, and, it was
Mhm.
very challenging. And then not only did we not have a lot of money, but, we were never wanted either. So it was very difficult. And, then, my family got out of it, and, we all went to college. We all got professions. I am one of 4 daughters. My mother and father are absolutely wonderful people. My mother is a passionate, empowered woman who taught all of us that we need to stand on our own. It is wonderful to be in love and to have a supportive partner, but we always have to fall on our own 2 feet. Those are the only feet we can depend on. So I grew up with that strength of independence. And it really does has impacted everything in my life afterwards, because I have become that listener. I have,
Mm,
I can see both sides of the experiences, right? Because I've lived both of those. I've been the privileged and I've been the oust person. So
right.
I
So
have,
like perspective as
yeah,
well.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's
Sorry to
helped me to be able to listen and to be in the background and absorb those experiences.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, there's always something when you have gone through a journey like that, there's the resilience and the overcoming challenges and obstacles that were in your way that you described that has to have contributed to the leader you are today. What resonates about that to you in your story?
It goes back to the patience, to the fact that I don't scare off easy. I know that things could always be worse, and
Mm,
it has, it's COVID, for example. We all were shocked and we all had to take a step back. But it was there's a tomorrow, and
oh,
there's another day, there's another step, there's a different way of doing things. Let's just change our perspective and accept this road that we're on and make the best of
yeah.
it. But I mean, that's an extreme example, of course, but there's examples of that throughout my life. My kids are always like, Mom, how can you talk to those people? You're so different. And how can you understand them? It's like, because I pause and I acknowledge that
Yeah.
inside all of us, there is a commonality. It doesn't matter how
Right.
different we were raised and how different experiences we've had. There is a common thread. There is a common link that we can find in each other. And it's almost like my gambling, my drug, my vice, whatever you call it, is to try to find that. I really believe that there is something in all of us that we can find a commonality, and I get a high on that. I really try to find
Yeah.
that in everyone.
The other word that came to mind while you were talking was, this idea of being, open-minded is a little sound is I feel like that's a little cliche, but really being able to position yourself from a different angle and a different viewpoint, and seeing perhaps the opportunities also where other people might be blind to them, because again, you're willing to be patient and take the pause. Um, so yeah, that's a powerful quality to have for sure. Can you describe a time when you felt most alive or fulfilled?
There's many times in my life. I'll give a personal and a professional, I guess, example. My husband and I, we absolutely love kayaking, and I love the serenity and the calm of being on the water, non-motorized
Mm,
boat, whatever you
mhm.
call it, and just taking in the nature and the experience, and introspectively, especially in the Finger Lakes region of New York, it is absolutely gorgeous. There's so many places to take out the paddle, but I do look forward to experiencing uh, quiet waters, because you will not find me doing any whitewater rafting, paddling,
Right.
or any sea kayaking. I'm not that experienced.
Right.
But we did have an opportunity to go to Alaska, and we went to the fjords, and we experienced the glaciers from the water in a kayak. It was
Wow.
absolutely out of this world. Um, but professionally, for at this moment in my profession, I feel absolutely 100% fulfilled, alive, supported. Uh, Working for Cayuga County Tourism, our board of directors is so boss. They are so amazing, engaged, open, giving us the autonomy to get the job done, but always being there as our spine. I feel great
Mm,
that we can stand for what we're working on, because I know that they will always be there to support us. And they've
mm,
said it not only in words, but in their actions and their support. And the community I'm working with right now, the voices that we're identifying and elevating are passionate, and the time is right. I stepped into a position in a location at the right moment for both, for myself and
mhm.
for the
Right.
destination. And the projects that I have been given to lead because of that are absolutely fascinating. And I am so proud of all the work everybody's working on.
Yeah. Well, those are, they're such contrasting examples, being actually almost alone on the water and the peace of that. But and then we shifted to your professional life where there's so much energy and contact with people, and it sounds like the relationships that you have with your stakeholders, like your board and your community, are also super energizing to you. So yeah, that there's a lot of layers there for sure. And
And
yeah,
yeah, I was
go
going to say,
ahead.
you definitely hit something very true about myself. And I think my husband's one of the few people that says it so often. I like extremes. I like my ice
Ah,
cream rock hard, frozen. I don't like that soft, woofy ice cream. But if I'm going to have a plate that's supposed to be hot food, pasta, I want it hot. I don't, if you ever give me
yes.
lukewarm pasta, not touching it. And that's in just about everything. I like to experience the extremes
Oh,
of the destination of emotions. I feel more, I feel alive, and I feel like it helps me understand each side of the story. So I like to put
wow.
myself in as many extremes as possible. When I was little, I
Wow.
used to love scary movies. The scarier, the better, because then I would have nightmares. And when I had nightmares, I found like I had more control. And if I could, and I knew I was in a nightmare, but if I could, get through that situation, I felt like I had accomplished something huge, right? So it's
Mhm.
been a thread my entire life, but those extremes and crossing those extremes is, you know,
Wow.
I like it.
You just pointing that out, like you just helped me learn something about myself, because I get a ton of excitement from, challenging myself and the energy of people and doing something really big. But I also can just as easily like want to crawl into a really quiet place and have absolute peace and calm. I'm a paddleboarder. So, I also, my favorite day in the world is when you can go out on our local reservoir when the water is like glass and the loons are making their sounds. And I'm the only one out there, and there's steam coming off the water. So, I had never thought about it that way in terms of like, kind of thriving in those extremes. That was a new way of looking at things for me. I think we have a lot in common where I'm discovering.
We
Love
must
it.
definitely, because that vision of being on that paddleboard, like you said, with the steam coming out of the water and that total serenity. Yes, I
Yeah.
completely could see myself in that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, moving on to some more questions about yourself. What do you stand for no matter what?
I settled on kindness.
Mm,
I like to give grace. I like to give space, and I don't like being put in a corner. So I don't like to put other people in a corner. I think sometimes we say things and we are held to them, and I don't think we need to be. I think everybody deserves a little kindness and a little grace and space. So I I have one of my favorite T-shirts, this ratty old T-shirt that I found in a secondhand shop, and it just says "Kindness matters." Period,
yeah.
and it does.
So this is, yeah, absolutely 100%. I completely agree. And this it seems obvious, but what do you think is so important about kindness in the world that we live in, and our work as leaders, because that's what I like to talk about, is leadership.
it's it's giving grace. It's given, it's listening and accepting everybody for who they are, and
Mm,
finding what they're good at and putting them in that position so that they can shine at that moment. It's just not expecting people to fulfill any role that they should. It's just, I don't know.
yeah.
Kindness is all encompassing. It does not fit any one bucket, but just, you know, letting things flow and don't hold
Yeah.
people to the buckets they feel they need to fill.
Right. Well, and I mean, if I were to think about that in terms of like leading,
Mhm,
people and uh yeah, events or whatever is also just recognizing the humanness, right?
mhm.
In people and that in order to help them thrive, that kindness and compassion is really critical to that relationship
Absolutely. Thank you
for
for
sure.
phrasing it that way. Yeah.
When have you underestimated yourself?
All of the time.
Yeah.
I suffer from major imposter syndrome. I
Mhm.
really feel like, walk into certain situations is like, is this where I belong? Am I the one supposed to be here? And after a while, I realized like, yes, this is where I'm supposed to be. Yes, that's the voice that needs to be here. And yes, I am the person to do it. But whenever I start something, I just don't feel it. And I have to give myself that kindness and give myself that time to reach that place. But yeah, imposter syndrome is serious. It's real, and I have definitely felt it many times.
Yeah, well, yeah, I can completely relate. I'm really you describe so well like kind of the process I think people go through with imposter syndrome that yeah, when you start something new and uncertain, that's when you feel it really strongly. And then there's this like there's part of it is time, and but what do you think and then the end point that you described, which is you feeling more confident and that you belong, what has helped you get from that point A to point B, of feeling more confident?
Back to the same thing, listening, sitting in the back and giving myself the time and the situation the time to evolve itself, and identifying the moment where my voice fits. It's just listening and waiting for that moment. It's like, oh, I do know that subject, or I do know that person that is really good on that subject. So me creating that introduction or putting those two pieces together is might be my role, might be my position in that. So it's just waiting for the opportune moment. And I have found myself where I don't give myself the grace and the time and the kindness, and I try to force it. I try to speak when I'm not quite ready, or I try to make a point, and that just makes my insecurities worse. So it's just
Mm,
waiting for that time where I do find my role in that environment. And I have been in rooms that ultimately I decided I am right. My initial instinct was correct. This is not where I belong, because I cannot find that moment that provides me the strength to realize this is the room where I belong in. But it's also having the fortitude in saying, no, this is not the project for me. This is not the time for me. This is not the place for me, and walking out and trying
yep.
something different. But once I get
Wow.
through that point, and once I'm able to find that role that I can fill, then I can run smoothly and continue with the project, and that snaps me out of it.
Big aha moment for me in there in that description because I think often we think that in order to feel confident we need to know it all or we need to be the expert, that we have to have the complete package. And what the aha moment was for me was no, it's about leveraging your strengths and using those strengths in the right situation and recognizing when you maybe not have those strengths and it's time to walk away. So that's a very important lesson.
Yeah.
I'm definitely yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
And along with that is acknowledging that walking away is not failure. I
Right.
didn't
Yes.
fail. I just acknowledge that this is not my role, this is not my place. And I could be taking the space of somebody who does belong in this room and does belong in this conversation. Because initially, I do feel like I failed when I walk
Yeah.
away. But it's, reminding myself, no, that's not a sign of failure. It's a sign of acknowledging that this
No.
is not your time and place.
Right. Yeah. No, 100%. Ooh, that's a big takeaway for me. I'm gonna write that down. So moving on. Oh, this is important. This is going to be an important one for you. What impact do you strive to have in the travel and hospitality industry?
everything kind of comes together with that. I think that tourism professionals need to acknowledge their role in the sustainability of our industry, of our world, and as storytellers that tourism professionals are, is being open-minded to waiting for the authentic stories of your destination. Don't stick to the script. Move the boulders out of the way and find out what's buried underneath them. So is
Yeah.
identifying the true character of your, your hotel staff, if you're in the hotel industry, of your restaurants and your culture, your heritage, anything that's there. It's, try to move beyond the scripted lines and
Yeah.
find what's behind things. And all that comes back to sustainability, because the more true we are to the character of the location or business that we're representing, the better job we can do and the better we can represent our destination.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that was something that was one of my biggest learnings at the Travel Unity conference, by the way, was
Oh,
just like, not trying to fit a certain molds when it comes to sustainability or diversity, equity, inclusion, but really what's the authenticity, what's the history of your location. That was, and there were so many great examples that were profiled. It was amazing. Great,
yeah,
really great experience.
yeah, it really was.
So, kind of related to the last question, but thinking, you know, if there were no obstacles in life, what vision would you pursue if you had everything you needed to succeed right now?
Oh, let me answer that in a a personal way.
Yeah.
One of the things that I have always dreamt about doing, and it goes back to everything we talked about, because that's really who I am and what I seek for. I've told my husband, when I retire, or maybe before we retire, depending on how life goes, I would love to do the slow travel through the United States. And to me, diners really represent like the community. So who
Uh-huh.
are the regulars at these diners? I would love to have those conversations with those individuals to find out who they are, what made them who they are, what were the major uh, experiences in the community that has shaped it, and travel around the United States and visit hundreds of
Yeah.
diners. And I am sure that there is a thread that
Yeah.
ties all these stories together, all these people, all these experiences. There's a word there. There's an
Yeah.
experience, a character trait that can find commonalities. So that is going to be my, oh, it's the word, magnus opus, my thesis, my grand
Yeah.
piece in my life is that experience. And I do, every now and then I sit there and I daydream when I'm having a hard day or when things are not going right. That's kind
Yeah.
of where I go back to. Those are anyway, that's one
Yeah.
thing to
No,
think
you're
about.
you're onto something there, because I actually, like, very out of the blue a couple years ago, and serendipitously someone stayed at my hotel and they actually had a bad experience. Something happened, and it kind of relates to what we've been talking about, because I could have very quickly just said, "Okay, I'm going to comp your stay and whatever, let's move on." But for some reason, I made a connection with this guest. It turns out he lived only 45 minutes away and was like having a staycation
Hmm.
with his family. And somehow we ended up having a more like slow conversation and connecting in very interesting ways. And he told me all about this documentary that he had been making with a former pro surfer. And this surfer, he did a documentary and told his story about recovering from alcoholism and going to surf in every single state, and they captured these surfing excursions. Now, it's not really possible. But he showed it is possible to surf in every state. He found somehow places where he could surf, whether it was on a river, on a lake that just happened to have a lot of wind that created waves. Um, all of these just like incredible efforts to make it happen in every United States. So it just what you were talking about with going to all the diners reminded me so much of that documentary. I'm gonna have to send it to you because there's a story there.
I
Just
would love that.
yeah,
And that is insane. I would have never thought that there was a place where surf at every state, unless it's
yeah.
artificially manufactured, which you can do. But
Well, I think one of the places, may have been like at a surf training center. But I mean, the places that he came up with, were w- like dams or, just places where they don't even have bodies of water. And he found something. So, and
wow.
it's a story of triumph and overcoming adversity, but also that tenacity and
Hmm.
perseverance to be able to get to every state and surf there. But yeah, I see a future documentary in your in your life. No
I
pressure
love
or anything.
I love those stories though that piece lots of stories together, and
Yeah.
there's a commonality identified between them, and I love
Yeah.
that. I will tell you, I tried surfing once. I took my kids. They were like 8 and 10 or something at the time, and they're like little springboards. Bing! They are straight up on the surfboard, and they do great. I couldn't do it for the life of me, but I
No.
admire and
Yeah.
follow that. The same thing with skiing, though. You will not find me on skis.
Right. Right. Not even water skis? No.
Not even water skis.
No. That's pretty hard, actually. I've only done it a couple times. Anyways, wow, we're coming to the end of our time together. This has been absolutely wonderful catching up with you today, Karen. Thank you so much for joining me. I really enjoyed our conversation. Until next time, I'm Rachel Vandenberg, and this is The Travel Leader.